for joining us. I'm Rolfe of Mentoring Works, and recruiting mentors is one of the top concerns identified in our survey of program organisers. So in this webinar I'm going to share with you important ideas and a 3-point plan that will assist you to attract and keep the mentors you need. I started nearly 30 years ago in the finance sector, and in the 80s I began helping senior managers who were retrenched to move on in their lives and build new careers. 15 years ago I began to focus on mentoring as the key strategy for people who want to progress their careers. Some of the programs I've been involved in more recent times, they've been building safer workplaces, increasing profitability in small business, and providing career development and leadership skills. Priorities often change in this climate, but one thing never shifts. For organisations, people really are their greatest asset. And while most just say that, if you offer mentoring, you show you really mean it. And strategically, mentoring is a cost-effective method for attracting, retaining and developing people if you do it right. And I guarantee you'll leave this webinar with practical information that you can use, and I have a special offer at the end that will add even more value. So let's make sure you make the most of our time together. And some of you may have participated in webinars before, but just in case you haven't, let me give you a quick overview. Webinars are interactive, and you will get the most out of this one if you're active rather than passive. So be sure you have a pen and paper to make notes and write down any questions. The webinar is being recorded. I was just double checking. So the webinar is being recorded so that you will be able to watch it and listen again later. Now, I do want you to ask questions or indeed make comments at any time. If you want to ask a question, you have the facility to put your hand up. So you will see a little hand icon there, and if you click on that, I will see that on the control panel, and at an appropriate time I'll pause and invite you to ask your question or make your comment. And I'm sorry, Liz, you're still having trouble hearing, but I'm on full volume here. I'm hoping everyone else, and you might give me a sound feedback. If you can hear me okay, I'd like other people to let me know. I'm not sure if that's a thing from our end or perhaps from Liz's end. I'm sorry, Liz, doing the best we can here for you. Coming back to asking questions, again, you can put your hand up by clicking that icon. You can also type in your questions if you wish, and I will read them. Now, if you wanted to ask a question or make a comment and you prefer to remain private, if you just type in the word anon at the beginning of your question, rather than acknowledging you by name, I'll respect your privacy there and read the question without mentioning who it's coming from. At the moment I'm seeing Barbara's got good sound, and Dione, there is some clicking noise on the phone. Don't know what that is, and I'm sorry about that. I don't think we can, I'm just checking, there's not much we can do about that, Dione. So I have to ask you to persevere with that. So we do also suggest, if you have a headset, so earphones and microphone that you can just pop on your head, I'm told that you get better results with that. So at the moment, everyone who's on the line is muted so that we cut out any background noise. But several times during the webinar, I'll call on people who've got their hand up and switch on your microphone so that you can ask questions or make a comment. Because the webinar is being recorded and could be accessed by others who visit the website, just be mindful that you are speaking in the public domain. But rest assured, I'll only call on you if you actually put your hand up and open up your microphone. So let's actually find out a bit more about who is on the line. And I'm actually going to open a poll at the moment. So you should see coming up on your screen 3 questions. So you can respond to one of these. Are you currently running a mentoring program? Planning a mentoring program or just exploring a general interest in mentoring. So if you're on your computer, you can choose one of those responses. I'm just looking to see, and we've got everyone's votes in here. So I'm going to close that poll and display the results. So the vast majority here are currently running a mentoring program, which is excellent because one of the benefits, the real benefits of a webinar is that we can actually get input from a lot of people that you perhaps might not normally meet. So I am asking you during the webinar, I will be asking people to share your own experience for the benefit of everyone. So I hope you would like to do that. Some of you, a small number, are planning a mentoring program, and a few are exploring a general interest in mentoring. So that's terrific. We're going to move on now, get into our topic area of recruiting mentors. And you know, most mentors volunteer from altruistic motivation. And sorry, just checking here. Most mentors volunteer from altruistic motivation, despite the fact that mentoring, like most other volunteer roles, does offer significant personal benefits. There are lots of reasons why people volunteer to mentor: personal satisfaction, the desire to assist others, or the wish to give something back. It's essential to recognise and publicly acknowledge their generosity. However, mentors often tell me that they feel they gain as much from mentoring as do the people they mentor. There are 4 major areas of benefit to both mentors and mentorees, as well as their organisations. The main aims of workplace mentoring are personal, professional and career development for the mentoree. Yet mentors report that they enhance their communication, become better leaders and develop their own career skills as a result of mentoring others. Some management development programs require participants to mentor others as part of their professional growth. Many organisations employ mentoring for knowledge management, recognising that the implicit knowledge or tacit knowledge in experienced workers' heads is too valuable not to pass on. In addition, mentoring is a better way to know what you know. Sharing knowledge with someone else deepens your understanding and appreciation of your own expertise. Mentoring allows people to learn why, as well as how certain actions produce outcomes. A mentoree's question can also help experts re-examine and perhaps change what they know. A lot more attention is being paid to well-being at work, and people are much more aware of the importance of relationships and communication in reducing stress. Neuroscience is identifying ways to create and strengthen neural pathways and stimulate growth in parts of the brain vital to mental health. It's been shown that the act of giving, or even observing someone give to or help another, stimulates areas of the brain that release the feel-good chemical dopamine. But mentoring does more than make people feel good. It provides time out for thinking and reflecting. It encourages critical thinking, goal setting and planning. Mentors learn to be present, to listen consciously and to reduce judgmental attitudes, all of which promote well-being. Developing a relationship with someone they might not otherwise meet, someone older or younger, or in some other way different from them, or from another part of the organisation, expands a mentor's perspective. Science research is now showing that difference, dissent and discordant ideas actually make us smarter. Building mentoring. Mentoring builds the confidence to acknowledge differences and respectfully disagree. It reduces resistance and defensiveness and allows people to explore ideas dissimilar to their own. This can produce more harmony, creativity and productivity. On top of these 4 key benefits of mentoring, there's the multiplier effect. This term is used in economics to describe the chain effect of benefits for each dollar spent. For example, your purchase in a retail store directly benefits a long line of people, from the business owner back to primary producers. It also indirectly benefits other businesses, people and their communities as profit gained is spent and money circulates. The multiplier effect in mentoring means that building individual capability delivers strategic advantages of increased organisational capacity as well. Furthermore, learning and practicing mentoring skills makes mentors better leaders, communicators and human beings. It's fundamental to the human condition to help others, to serve without thought of reward. Every day volunteers fight fires or provide emergency services. Volunteers serve on boards and committees as guides in museums and galleries. They help schools, hospitals and homes. At the Olympics and the airport, volunteer fundraisers organise charity balls, fun runs or raffles. Volunteers from all walks of life give the precious gift of their time and more. Why? So what I'd like you to do now is think about it. Type in or put your hand up if you've got a microphone and would like to speak. Why do you think people in general volunteer? Why do they do that? I'd love your input on this. I'm just going to pause for a moment now and I'd love you to type in why you think people volunteer. Oh, hello Peter, you're down there in Canberra. You're saying you think people volunteer because they have an interest in the activity, so the activity itself, yep. And Rod is saying people like to give back and make a difference. Yes, they certainly do. Filipina's also saying to give back. And Peter's continued, okay, that need to belong. So Peter, I guess you're referring to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the elevated needs there is that desire to belong to a community or a tribe or a group and to contribute. Okay, thank you, Peter. And Liz is saying to engage with others, feel part of a larger cause or an effort. Yes. And Dione is saying to share their knowledge, assist people in growing, may see the potential in someone. Okay, so we've got a pretty good handle on this idea, and we know from our experience of mentors volunteering that there's some really good people out there in the world who just want to give something back, to contribute, to make a difference. I'd like to share some more ideas with you now as we move through this webinar. And the most important thing I'm going to share with you, I suppose I can categorise it as a 3-point plan for actually recruiting mentors, because despite the real benefits and all those reasons you mentioned why mentors volunteer, it may be hard to recruit already busy people to devote their time and energy to the mentoring role. Certainly in our time-poor, stimulus-rich world, volunteers must manage their commitments, but when they find that worthy cause that captures their heart, the intrinsic satisfaction they gain is more valuable than gold. So I'm going to offer you today a 3-point plan, which is, first of all, to identify and get to know those potential mentors that are out there, so that you can then communicate with them in their language. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I'm not just talking about speaking Spanish or French here or English, but a little bit more than that. And so that you can then cherish and reward them, but honour their altruism. There's a bit of a juggling act that needs to go on here. As I said at the outset, most mentors volunteer for altruistic reasons, and we do need to honour and really value that and acknowledge it. And at the same time, we want to offer whatever rewards we are able to do and make sure it's a very rewarding experience that they have. So let's look at the first point, identifying potential mentors and getting to know them. So you need to think about and decide who you want as mentors. Obviously, this will depend on the nature of your mentoring program. So you've got to think about, in identifying potential mentors, you want to think about who is the mentoring for? What is it meant to achieve? How will the mentoring take place? Because obviously that will make a difference if it's going to take place in a geographic area, if the potential is there for it to take place over the internet, electronically, by phone. That will all make a difference to who you can choose as mentors. I want you need to think about too about what life experience people need. Are there specific knowledge and skills they need? Maybe there are, maybe there aren't. Think about the attributes and the abilities your mentors would have, and what personal qualities would they bring. Think about, do you really need a mentor that comes from the same world as those they mentor? For example, often we match experienced professionals with a young professional, a successful business person with a startup business person, a senior student with a junior student. And I've seen ex-military personnel helping those in the military transition to civilian life. It could be late career head teachers with new head teachers, or senior managers with emerging leaders. But equally, there is the possibility from mentors from a very different life journey to offer new and valuable perspectives. Some I've seen, and I must say most of these I've picked up from the International Mentoring Association conference, showcasing various mentoring programs there at their annual conference. But I've heard of the varsity team mentoring first graders. What a lovely idea. I know here in Australia we have a lot of retired people who mentor high school students. And I've seen businesswomen mentor young single mothers. And I've actually experienced a program where CEOs mentored professional football players to help them think about their career after football. So I want you to kind of just take on board that mentors don't have to be the same as those they mentor, though they do have to be able to build rapport and trust with them. There's a paradox that you'll need to manage here. You want to develop a clear picture of a potential mentor and yet not rule out people with mentoring qualities that may not be obvious at first glance. You want to be creative and cast your net wide. So I'd like to ask you again for some input here, typing in or putting your hand up if you've got a microphone and would like to speak. I'd like you to respond. Who have you recruited? So let's have some examples. And also put your thinking caps on, get a bit creative. Who else could you try for that same mentoring program? So I'll pause again. I know it takes a little while for you to just start to think and then start to type in. So the question is, who have you recruited? So let's have some real life examples. And who else could you actually try? Can you think of some alternatives that might work in that situation? Okay, I'm going to move on because I've got quite a bit to cover. Okay, Filipina is saying, we've tried recruiting civic groups, college alumni program graduates. Okay, good. My trainees, not-for-profit association officials, staff looking at career changes. Thanks, Peter. Rod is saying, I've been concentrating on the communication skills more than anything else, but a strong subject knowledge is also essential, all from within my company so far. Thanks, Rod. Yeah, you know what, I think that concentrating on those communication skills is a really positive approach to take. And while I agree, strong subject knowledge can often be essential, if you haven't got a big enough pool, I'd go for people with the communication skills or with the willingness and availability, and set up your program so you've got the opportunity to actually refer the mentorees on for someone else who has that actually knowledge. Thanks, Rod. Barbara's saying, recruiting in my own firm, senior people mentor junior people. That's a very useful and frequently used way. Okay, Barbara's continuing, concentrating on technical skills, communication skills and strong leadership skills. Okay, good. If any more come in, I will pause and read those out. I'm going to move on. As I said, we've got a lot to cover today. So looking at actually selecting, so assuming that you've got a pool out there, you may need to set down some selection criteria for mentors. And you'll need to check your government regulations regarding background checks and security clearances for those working with children, for example. Qualifications, experience or achievements might be relevant for others. In organisational mentoring program, you will want mentors to be offline, that is not in the direct line of authority above those they mentor. So those would all feed into your selection criteria. Above all, when deciding whom you want as mentors, remember that it's the whole person, not just who they are in terms of position or what they are, but the human being at the heart of that's at the heart of mentoring. So I'm going to move on now, and I will continue on, but if you want to share something about your selection strategies and type those in, I'll pause in a moment and read some of them out. I'm going to get on to what I think is of most interest to you, and that is how do you actually find mentors. And you may be a bit puzzled by the picture that I've chosen to illustrate this, but it will make sense in just a moment. Because you know our earliest ancestors were nomadic, and like traditional Indigenous people, and this is a traditional Indigenous person from Australia, they used two methods for getting what they needed, hunting and gathering. Hunters roamed far and wide, understanding their quarry and using strength and skills to reach them. Gatherers stayed close to camp, their intimate knowledge of the environment allowing them to take advantage of nearby abundance. Gatherers do best in groups, work with support from their clan, share and swap resources. Now, hunting and gathering in the context of mentoring means understanding their habits. Where do they hang out? Who or what do they notice? Who or what influences their behaviour? Hunting for mentors means having a far-reaching communication strategy, targeted to capture their attention, excite their interest and call them to action. It's a mass marketing approach, and it might include advertisements, advertorials, so a story that actually has a tagline inviting applications to join your mentoring program, but the focus is on an actual story about the program, about the benefits. You might use brochures, posters. Social media is becoming even more important, and a lot of organisations have their own internal social media platforms now. Promotional items and giveaways are becoming more popular too. The good old letters, real hard copy letters that you send in the mail, or email is, I guess we're all overburdened with email, but it's certainly a strategy for reaching a large number of people quickly. You might do live presentations at various events, and now we have quick and easy technology to set up video presentations. So I'm keen to find out who uses any of these methods and who's willing to share what you do. So perhaps you type in, or again you can put your hand up if you wish to speak on the microphone. Who's using any of these techniques? Okay, just pausing to see if anyone. Okay. Okay, so Barbara does live, I presume live presentations, so probably going, okay, so Barbara's saying because we're in-house, yes, you can go and talk to people live at presentations. Okay. Liz is saying, in addition to what you've already identified, recommendations from our board. Also, don't forget former mentees who may now be ready to serve in the mentor role. Yes, thanks for that, Liz. Barbara's saying also have posters. And Filipina is saying, being that we are a non-profit program, we've had little opportunity to invest in the strategies you've stated. We've only canvassed the community with flyers. Okay. And e-blast, Barbara is talking about. Okay, good. So let's look at the other form of strategy, which is what I've labelled gathering. So we're using the hunting-gathering metaphor. And in terms of gathering, that really means working your network. And this would be especially so when you don't have a great budget. So starting close to home, talking to people personally and asking for referrals and recommendations. It may cost less money, but it will take time, your time. You'll need to be enthusiastic and energetic. However, do look for others who will support the cause. Your strategies obviously will include one-to-one conversations, a direct approach to potential mentors, preferably face-to-face, but by phone if need be. Those presentations that people have already spoken about, getting up in front of a group, speaking at meetings, making an announcement at a function. Champions is a really good idea. So these could be within an organisation, senior people who perhaps don't have time to actually get directly involved in the mentoring program, but will lend support by adding their voice, getting into places where maybe you can't get to. So recruits and champions. They could be well-known, inspirational or influential people who will actively promote mentoring and help you recruit mentors. Testimonials. I've mentioned several times that mentors often tell me that they get as much out of the mentoring experience as do mentors. So if you can get some of your mentors to actually write or even go on video and state what they have gained, this will get you a lot of credibility and a lot of mileage in terms of recruiting mentors. We know from sales that one of the best forms of getting sales is testimonials from people who are like the people you're trying to recruit. And as someone said earlier, yeah, recruiting previous mentorees, so they've been through the experience and they can turn around. They've received, so time for them to give back. So anyone who wants to share anything they've done in your networks, please do so. Liz is telling us that she did a video and posted it on YouTube, added a link to that in their email blast and social media initiatives. So when you've got the budget and the technology, there's a lot you can do. So take advantage of that. Thanks, Liz. So now you've got some ideas about how to get that message across to potential mentors, but you still need to work out what that message is and how you will communicate it. And some of you may have seen the previous webinar on communication strategies, how to get the message across. If you haven't seen that one, I would recommend that you take a look. As we move into this second point, you've talked about identifying and getting to know them. Now we need to communicate in their language. And as I said, I'm not just talking about speaking French or Spanish here. And this quote, I think, sums it up really well. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. And in fact, I'm really talking about speaking from the heart and to the heart. And really, after all, it's the heart rather than the head that makes people get involved as a volunteer and in mentoring too. In fact, an amateur as opposed to a professional does not get paid for what they do. Historically, the Olympic Games were only open to amateur sports people. The origin of the word amateur is amare, to love. And whenever people give of themselves freely, the motivation is of the heart. Some volunteers love to work with animals or children, others do not. Some people love to test their physical strength and skill. Others enjoy an intellectual challenge. Some want to share their own passion and ignite the interests of others in history, art, or some other pursuit. Some support a charity that's close to their hearts because of a loved one's experience. We're not all the same, and you need to understand the values, interests and attitudes that motivate your potential mentors if you want them to volunteer. The more you know about their motivation, the more you will be able to shape a message that will appeal to them and communicate it in the language of their heart. So I suggest you write down, if not now, certainly later on, this is homework for extra credit, what might motivate your potential mentors. And Liz, thanks for your feedback. Liz is saying it's a great concept and a great quote. And yeah, so feel free to use that one yourself. I think it really sums up what we need to do when we are communicating with our mentors. The other thing that might be of interest to you as well is a conversation I actually had with a colleague of mine, Leonie Stanfield, of Career Talk a little while back, and I wrote about this in a newsletter some time ago. And we talked about the idea that that there are two types of mentors, those that mentor from competence and those that mentor for challenge. And I think the majority of mentors come from competence. They want to share their expertise. Leonie Stanfield, who's just completing her Masters in Career Development, believes that mentoring from competence reinforces the mentor's self-image as a good listener and someone who gives. It's a powerful motivation. And she said, mentoring reinforces their identity and reaffirms their confidence. And she said, mentoring from competence allows one to remain in the comfort zone. It's a different person who values the challenge of learning and self-discovery. And I'll quote her here as well too. Leonie said, it's a brave and rare person who is willing to experience mentoring from a more vulnerable place. And she said this kind of mentor steps into the unknown, trusting the process. They understand that in facilitating another's journey of insight, they uncover their own. In exploring the needs and goals of another, they reveal their own. And in eliciting the values of another, they examine their own. For them, mentoring is not so much an affirmation as mutual growth. They do it because they are committed to joint learning. They're learning about themselves at the same time as they assist someone else. It's not unusual for a volunteer to begin with the mentoring from competence model and move to mentoring for challenge. A shift takes place when mentors are equipped with a process for leading a conversation that does not depend on expertise in their field to produce outcome. And if you introduce the framework of a mentoring conversation early in your communication to potential mentors, that will actually give people a lot more confidence. And I'm sure most of you have seen in my previous work this model. This is the model that I actually teach mentors and indeed mentorees to facilitate the mentoring conversation. And I find people find this gives them security that the mentoring from competence group need, and it's also a springboard that inspires those who will mentor for challenge. So I'm just looking at a comment from Rod. Asian concept, you can only learn from a teacher for so long. To advance, then you must be a teacher. It forces you to clarify. Yeah, I think that's a great concept, and one, again, we can quote or use that in our communication with mentors. Okay, so back to that 3-point plan. The idea is that we identify and get to know our potential mentors. We communicate in their language, and what I'm talking about there is the language of their heart, and you can only know that language if you get to know the people and think about their values and their needs and their motivation, really. So let's go on to point number 3 then, cherish and reward mentors. And I wonder how many of you have actually read this book, The 5 Love Languages. It's a beautiful book by Gary Chapman, and he talks about the 5 languages as being words of affirmation, giving quality time, receiving gifts, acts of service, and physical touch. And I do commend this book to you for your own personal development, and also because although it's talking about the love languages in the context of special relationships, I believe that the principles need not be restricted to those intimate relationships in our lives. Each of the love languages used in an appropriate way creates an environment that supports human relationships of all types. One of the reasons mentoring is so appreciated is because it embodies all of these languages. You use the love languages in your interactions with people when you give genuine compliments and use statements of appreciation and encouragement. And when you give undivided attention, being fully present and engaged with another person. If you provide a tangible symbol of value, so it might be a book or a physical resource, that or handout or something physical that you give to a person in a mentoring relationship. And when you offer any sort of assistance, and I actually meant to write open a door, offer a seat, offer them tea or coffee, or provide assistance of any kind. And physical touch, obviously we have to be careful in a business context here, but it's perfectly appropriate in most cultures to shake hands with people. And when we do make that physical contact, it's really important. And I don't know if you know, probably you do, that the empty hand that you offer to shake, when it's extended, it signifies that we are without a weapon or a shield. The ancient tradition is there, intending neither to attack nor defend. We're willing to actually trust people. It will be easier to recruit members if you speak in love languages. This will strengthen your relationships with them, and it will model the style of interaction you want them to have with those they mentor. And there are two words that are often overlooked, and they mean so much to mentors. The two words, as you realise, are thank you. But they can be overlooked, underutilised. And don't just say thank you once. Say it again and again in as many different ways as you can. So I'm just wondering, I'm going to put up a screen full of ideas that I've collected, and I'd love you to type in any additional ways that you say thank you to your mentors. And not just at the beginning or at the end, but all the way through a mentoring relationship. It's sort of like you need to keep up the momentum with people's motivation, as you know. So here are some of the ways that I've seen. Please type in your additions. We can get the CEO or someone very senior or someone highly respected in your community to make a welcoming speech at the launch of a program and thank the participants, and particularly acknowledge the mentors for their volunteering, their altruistic response. A round of applause, I think, is always appreciated. You can send letters or cards, and again, go back to the old-fashioned handwritten letter, hand-signed letter at least, a card, a greeting card or a postcard, very useful. If you have budget, you could give gifts, or perhaps you might get sponsorship, which pays for gifts to your mentors. You can give a certificate, some sort of plaque or a badge to acknowledge the contribution of your mentors. You can put a story in your newsletter, or indeed go further afield with a press release. Certainly giving public recognition at meetings. A group photo is lovely. People are often very sensitive about individual photos, but most of them you can get to take a group photo, so you could do that again at the launch of your program or at the end. And I do strongly recommend having some sort of closing ceremony where again you give the gift, the certificate, have the CEO speak, or make some acknowledgement of the people that's participating. Okay, Rod is saying ask for their advice or something in your world. Okay, so getting input or advice. And Liz is saying a letter of appreciation along with an offer to send a similar letter to their manager if they'd like. Opportunity to present a case, either alone or with their mentee at our closing dinner. Yeah, that's a lovely thing to do. Thank you for that, Liz. Thanks for that comment. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, you really need to keep up the momentum in a mentoring program. And this is an example of developing mentoring strategy. And if you look to the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see that a large part of the program is a mentoring support program. And there are some ideas there about ways that you will follow up over the life of your program. So if you've got a 6-month program, you want to be following up, I would suggest at least once a month, if not more frequently. If you've got a 12-month program, again, at least once a month. You can do individual follow-up face-to-face, you can do it web-based or by phone. You might have audio visuals or printed resources, and even a mentor-to-mentor program, because I think it's quite ironic that we ask people to mentor others, and yet we give, if they're lucky, we give them some sort of training, but then we pretty much leave them to it. So I recommend mentoring mentors. You might be able to have group follow-up sessions, maybe networking forums, and I do recommend some sort of midpoint review where you gather people together, and some sort of finale, that closing ceremony, something that gives people closure, recognition, and gives them the opportunity to meet and talk once again. So follow-up is definitely very important. Don't just leave mentors to it once you've matched and introduced mentoring partners to each other. Your program of support could include checking whether they actually have had their first meeting, so very soon after mentoring pairs have got together, make sure they've had their first meeting. And soon after that, again, making sure that they've got some agreements and some goals identified. And then at predetermined points, I suggest after 3 months or perhaps 5 meetings, the pairs should jointly review their relationship and agree whether they're going to continue or not, and any adjustments that they might need to make. This could be an opt-out point for them, and you will need to manage that transition. So if they're going to opt out of the program entirely, or perhaps the relationship isn't just working out, you might need to rematch the partners, because just because it doesn't work out with one pair, they might both go on to, or each go on to different relationships that are really good. I do recommend a regular check-in, not checking up, but checking in, to make sure things are going okay, see if they need any assistance. And as I mentioned, a midpoint and some sort of final event ceremony at the conclusion of the program. So that would be the points of following up that you need to schedule. So as we begin to come towards the last 15 minutes, just going to invite any more questions or comments that you have. Just looking, Peter's saying, invest in their further training as a reward works well too. Yeah, so it could be, I'm imagining, Peter, something like you have conversations with the mentors and look at where their own personal development needs are, and provide training as a reward. Okay, so that's something that brings benefits back to the organisation as well as to the individual. So, okay, looking for any further comments. So, in this webinar, I've suggested a range of actions that will help you identify and get to know potential mentors. I've spent some time talking about communicating in their language, and specifically using those love languages and the language of their heart, which you can only use when you get to know people, find out their motivation and their values. And then developing a program for yourself that cherishes the mentors and rewards them, as well as honouring their altruistic intent. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to share your key learnings from this webinar and the actions you will take to recruit mentors. So take a moment now. We've got a little bit of time up our sleeves, but I will be wrapping up shortly. So now's the time. If you have any questions, and I can throw those to the entire group, we've got quite a few people on the line, you can type those in. But in particular, I'm looking for some feedback about key learnings. Maybe it was something new you hadn't thought about. Maybe it was something not new, you already had this information, but you might be thinking about it in a different way or thinking about how you can apply it. Or it could simply be a reinforcement of your own ideas. So I'd love to hear from each of you. What is your key learning? And also, what actions will you take? Really important that you jot down some action out of this. Okay, so Barbara is saying, cherish and reward is an area that we need to improve. And you got some great ideas from the webinar. Thanks for that, and thanks to all the people who participated and contributed their ideas. That's what really makes this webinar work, if people actually contribute their ideas. Okay, Rod's saying, I had a look at mentoring as an ongoing program, but you've stressed the start and conclusion with clarity on objectives. Yeah, Rod, and actually if you look at some of my other webinars and some of my other material where I talk about designing mentoring programs, and I would say the last part of what you've said, clarity on objectives is a real key to mentoring program success. It helps you design a program that will meet those objectives. It helps you get support from your organisation because you link those objectives into the strategic aims of your organisation and what's strategically valuable to them right now. And it helps you actually evaluate your program. If you've got your objectives up front, you can extrapolate from that what you can measure and what will tell you that you've got success in your program. Having a start and a conclusion is also helpful in terms of recruiting mentors. Mentors are, I would suggest, more likely to put their hand up if they know this is for a finite period. It's for 6 months or it's for 12 months. There's a solid conclusion. It's not forever. I think that makes it a little bit easier for people to put their hand up and volunteer. Okay, Dion is saying, the 3-point plan and the use of the love language, great ideas can be used across other areas as well, i.e. training. Absolutely. And I have to tell you, I was a little nervous talking about love languages in a business context, but I know in my own heart it's what makes a real difference. And I guess in the field of mentoring, where we're talking about human beings and human relationships, I believe mentoring is a unique relationship. And I think it's appropriate to tap into those love languages. And I hope the examples I gave you actually gave you ideas about this is not just intimate relationships, these carry across and can be used quite appropriately in a business context. Okay, Liz is saying, loved your exploration of mentoring from competence versus challenge. Okay, now Liz, and to the rest of you as well, I actually wrote about that in a newsletter some time back. I can't actually remember the title off the top of my head, but if you go to my website and click on newsletters, you will find the archive of all of the newsletters I've written probably over the last couple of years. And feel free to explore those. And what you need to know too is that I'm very happy for you to reuse my articles in your own newsletters. All I ask is that you attribute authorship to me and make mention of the mentoring newsletter as the source. So if you want to actually use any article in my newsletter, you can do that with attribution. So, and there is an article on mentoring from competence versus challenge. Helping mentors to move from the former to the latter might be a nice gift. Any sources to consult? No, I can't give you a source other than the article, which, as I said, you're free to use. That idea actually came from a wonderful conversation I had just one day by chance, having coffee before a workshop was about to start, where my friend Leonie and I were just talking about some ideas around mentoring, and it came out. I made some notes and pulled the article together based on what she said. So thanks. Yeah, I think it's something I'd like to explore more too. Okay, Rod, Rod's quick with fingers. I have just downloaded the 5 languages audiobook from iTunes. Looking forward to it. Okay, so there, I didn't know it was as an iBook on iTunes. I must do that too. I'd love to listen to it. Okay, Peter's saying, as always, you reinforce and strengthen my belief in the need for mentoring, both formal and informal, by reminding me of the keys. The participant input was great, as I'm often a lone voice. Oh, Peter, we'll look at love languages as another option. So again, thanks to everyone who participated. You can see, and I'm sure Peter's not the only one. He's the one who voices it, but sometimes you can feel like a voice in the wilderness there. So there are other people out there. Filipina. I've learned that we need to communicate in their language versus bombarding the potential, oh, this is great, versus bombarding the potential mentors with statistics, except testimonials. Yeah, I think testimonials are an exception there. Thank you for reminding me about that. Sometimes we lose sight of the mission and only focus on numbers, quantity. Yeah, great stuff, Filipina. Okay. Okay, and thank you, Liz, you're welcome. And don't forget, the rest of you can access that, it's a great resource, if I do say so myself, those newsletter articles. Okay, Filipina's saying, I find it difficult to recruit male mentors. What's your opinion on why that is? My opinion on why that is. I have difficulty articulating my opinion without sounding sexist, so here goes. I think that, and this happens every time, when a mentoring program is advertised, available to everyone, I find that more women than men put their hands up to be a part of that program. In an organisation where you've got your typical hierarchy, you're going to have often more men than women in the managerial levels that you might be looking, and then you do get more males. I think it comes back to, okay, I've got the guys answering here, so thanks for that, you're going to help me out. I think it could be an issue, again, of language. Maybe we females don't speak the language of males so well. Let's see what Peter and Rod have got to say. Peter's saying, male mentors are often difficult to recruit due to the culture they're in, especially if it's technical in nature. Okay, so yeah, and you know what I also think? I think men are a bit more nervous about the touchy-feely, warm, fuzzy aspects, the soft skills as they're often called. And you get a lot of technical people, IT engineers, people like that, who may be unfairly labelled as not having these skills. So maybe it's a matter of getting to know them. I reckon the one-on-one strategy would be a good approach there, Filipina. Okay, Rod says, can she identify a male she thinks may be good and go ask him for feedback? Now there's a good suggestion from Rod. Identify a male you think might be good, go ask them for feedback, and also recruit some male champions to speak for the program and the benefits of being a mentor. Okay, Liz is saying, oh, personal note, Anne. Oh, thank you. She's saying it was a great presentation. Your passion for mentoring is obvious. I share it. If your travels New York, oh, cool. I'll be there anytime I can. I'll visit you in New York next time I'm there. Thanks, Liz. And look, sometimes I get embarrassed by my passion, but do you know what? I always get positive feedback. And so I urge you to use your passion. If you feel passionate, let it show. You know, wear your heart on your sleeve when it comes to mentoring. Okay, so Peter, the recent bad press incidents increasing accountability have put up barriers for many potential males, but again, champions and selected leaders are a great starting place. Okay, Barbara saying don't be embarrassed, it's exciting and motivating. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do, just as we start to wrap this up now, I promised you a special offer to add even more value. I don't know how many of you already have this manual. I'm sure some of you do. It's my manual on how to design and run your own mentoring programs. And it goes into not as much depth on recruiting mentors as we've covered here today, but certainly it goes into matching, it goes into that issue of setting your objectives, it talks about evaluation and a whole range of things, piloting your program. So if you found this webinar useful, you'll definitely find this manual useful. And what I've also done is put together an ebook on recruiting mentors. It covers pretty much the same territory as we've covered here in this webinar. So if you want it in a concise printed format, that is available for free when you purchase either How to Design and Run Your Own Mentoring Program, or indeed any purchase you make this month, you will get that free ebook. Do visit our website and look at the many resources. We've got a lot of complementary resources there, but obviously we're a commercial enterprise and there's products there for you to purchase as well. And just in closing, I'd like to say that the success or failure of your mentoring strategy depends on many things, but what you've gained as a result of participating today is strategies for recruiting and retaining your mentors, which obviously is a very important factor. If you'd like further assistance through consulting, training or resources, please call me or contact me. If you're not a member of the Mentoring Network, and that is free, please go to the website and join up. We can in fact continue our conversations through the discussion forum there. And I aimed in this webinar to give you something to think about, news, and I hope you'll come back and share some of your ideas in our next Complementary Mentoring Works webinar. So keep an eye on the newsletter for your special invitation, and thank you very much for participating today. I really enjoyed talking with you. Thank you.